You know him as the lead singer of the band Shinedown. And I'm talking about Brent Smith.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Brent, how are you, man?
It's been a minute. Like a long minute, but it's good to hear your voice.
I will say this, you've always been the kind of guy, over the past, 20 plus years, we've had this, kind of working relationship, and we don't see each other often. But when I do run into you, you are just always, super pleasant, and you make a guy like me feel quasi important. So I do thank you for that.
Well, you're not quasi important. You're very important. And the feeling is 100% mutual. Over the years, you've been such a huge supporter of the band, and I just have an immense amount of respect for you. So it's awesome to be able to talk to you.
Oh, man, thank you so much. Coming up, we'll talk about Brent's first job before Shinedown, and maybe some business stuff that he's involved with outside of music.
Maybe me and you will just partner up, and we'll just we'll corner the market.
Man, if you would allow me to ride any type of your coattails, I would jump at it in a heartbeat. I won't hold my breath, but I definitely, you've got a guy who would quit everything he's doing and jump on board. So Brent Smith from Shinedown, my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Brent, I'm watching the video for this song, Symptom of Being Human. And I can't help but think that you are singing this song. Is this like autobiographical by any means?
I mean, in all reality, the song and the record Planet Zero, obviously, there's a lot of it that's autobiographical because I write about what I know. Being the main lyricist in the band for the better part of 2 decades, I've always been honest in the songwriting. But, we wrote Planet Zero, the album, and that's the album that A Symptom of Being Human is on. We wrote it in the midst of the pandemic. So when we wrote Symptom, it was a real gift in a lot of ways. And when you're writing a record, you don't necessarily get a gift on every album. What a gift is it's kind of a song that utilizes you as a vessel, and it almost writes itself because it's very necessary and it wants to be born.
Right.
But just taking on the frustration of, at the beginning of the pandemic when everybody was angry and upset and frustrated and scared, and there were all these emotions going around, we wrote Symptom. It was one of the very first songs that we wrote for the record. And really the song is about understanding that you're allowed to, in this lifetime, and your life is a journey, which is exactly what life is. It's a journey. You're allowed to have as many human moments as you need.
What I really love about this song and what you do is you kind of normalize, mental health or people that are struggling with some kind of mental thing. It's like, hey, I've got this too. And I think the pandemic actually kind of helped that bring it like center stage for a lot of people to say like, hey, I think everybody's got this. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the point of the song is the fact that we're all a work in progress.
Right.
With or without a pandemic. Like, life is a journey, like I was saying. But the normalizing of mental health, I mean, we've known each other for a very, very long time, and I'm in a band that's been talking about mental health for the better part of 2 decades before it was like in the forefront and people were talking about it. And for the longest time, I dealt with the insecurity of people asking for help because they wanted, I think there was an insecurity because people were afraid to tell someone that they were struggling mentally, or that because they thought that they were either going to be made fun of or they were going to be embarrassed by it, or that the person they were talking to was thinking that they were just trying to get sympathy for something and what have you. Listen, man, this world that we're in right now, especially now with technology and communication, it's an interesting place to navigate. The worst thing that you could do, though, from a mental health standpoint, at least from my experience, is be quiet. If something's going on, you got to talk to somebody. It's probably the bravest thing you could do.
And I do think that the pandemic helped a lot of people realize that, you know, even if you feel like you have it together somewhat, you go through that pandemic and you realize quickly that you didn't have it together as much as you thought you did. I'd be the first one. I mean, look, I've dealt with some anxiety and stuff like that over the years, so I kind of know a little bit about what troubles me. But there's, you know, those guys, you look at the captain of the football team, the good looking guy and the super successful guy. Like, we all are human. We all have like something. There's something that we're all dealing with. I think that song is just very important, that you bring that message to people like, hey, even me, I got some of these issues too. And I think that helps people to hear stuff like that.
Absolutely. Also, too, just the community that we are in music in general. Listen, the most powerful music is extremely powerful, especially when you're talking about songs, because they can evolve for you in your lifetime also at different points in time.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
the dynamic, like rock and roll for me, I know that people put that as a style and a genre, but really rock and roll is a way of life for people. And the rock and roll community has got to be, listen, in that community, anyone from anywhere at any time is welcomed all the time. And we're all on this planet together. So it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, whether you're younger, whether you're older, the color of your skin, that's irrelevant. Your religion, that's your business. That's what makes you an individual. We are all connected with each other. It's called the human condition, and we should be there for each other. But, I mean, sometimes we get into this world that we're in, and there's so much going on at such a fast pace. I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, that device that you're attached to, please remember something, that you need to be in control of the device. The device doesn't need to be in control of you.
Right. So, Brent, when you were growing up, grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, I didn't know that you were an only child.
Yep.
Did you have a lot of friends growing up? Was this something maybe that you have dealt with on and off for a little bit from the time you were a youngster?
I mean, I don't want to be like cliche, but I mean, I grew up in a tough environment in regards to when I started to go to school. I was a bit of not necessarily like everyone else. But the interesting thing about that was I was always very aware from an early age, and I feel really blessed about this, like what I do for a living and the life that I lead and why music is such a huge part of me. That really was from birth. Like, I can't remember ever not wanting to be what I am today.
Was your parents musical?
To perform. Yeah. What's that?
Were your mom and dad musical?
My dad was a little bit, not so much my mother, but, you know, for me, because I was an only child also, and I was heavily into sports when I was growing up, and of course I had friends, but I was also the kid that was totally fine with being by himself.
Yeah, me too.
Alone. I had no issues with it.
Yeah.
Because I was always writing something. From the moment I could, like, conjure up a thought, I always started to like write poetry, and then I would want to just, you know, immerse myself in songwriters more than anything, not just performers, but just like people that wrote songs. I was enamored by that. I still am to this day.
You said your mom and your dad was musical. Was he in a band or no? He was just liked music.
He did some stuff when he was like a teenager. Like, you know, my dad was a teacher for over 40 years, and he went from high school to elementary to middle school. He worked with different colleges and what have you, but he was also a physical education teacher, and he was also a football coach. He was a basketball coach when I was a baby. I was probably like 2 or 3 years old, and he actually coached state championship high school team when I had just been born. And so he's very athletic. But like when he was younger and his teenage years and what have you, I think he had a band. He knows how to play guitar a little bit. He always says he lives vicariously through me.
Right. Dude.
But no, my dad's got a decent voice, actually.
So what kind of sports were you playing when you were growing up?
Mainly basketball and baseball. And then the thing is my dad had me in sports like right out of the, as soon as I could hold a bat or I could pick up a ball. And I went as far as I could go to what I felt like I don't want to say like up until the point where I just wasn't comfortable with it anymore. It was more about like I had just lost interest in it because from going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, from the moment I entered the earth, I always wanted to perform. I always wanted to write songs. I always wanted to be a singer. And so growing up, I was doing a lot of the sports for my dad, and I was decent. I was probably a better ball player for a baseball player than I was a basketball player. But at the age of like 15, I went to my dad and I just said, I know that this is a connection that me and you have in sports, and we don't have to lose that connection, but I just don't want to play anymore.
Wow. How do you take that?
It was a little rough in the beginning. He just kind of he was like, well, why can't you do both? And I said, Dad, I just don't love it anymore, and I want to love what I do. And I think when he understood that, he understood it much more clearly, because my grandmother has always told me, find something truly that you love, that you want to do for your life.
Absolutely.
What you want more than anything in the world. Find something that you love, and you'll never work a day in your life.
That's exactly what my old man told me, and those are very good words. So with your dad being, a teacher, and a coach, was there any pressure of you going to college? Because I know you were in a band in high school, but was there pressure to go to college? Did you want to be, go Vols right in your own backyard?
Yeah, my dad is very, very much go Vols.
I bet.
Not really, because at 14, I grabbed a fake ID from a friend of mine, and I started like sneaking out and like playing clubs when I was like 14, 15 years old.
Wow.
And yeah, I kind of was always like hanging out with older kids anyway. And a lot of my friends had older brothers and sisters, which made for an amazing kind of library of sound and music and artists growing up, because a lot of my friends, they did have older siblings, and they had amazing just catalogs of music. So that was always rad. And I feel very, very lucky that I was around a lot of people like that, because it really helped shape me and mold me in my youth. So college, I barely made it out of high school, man. My parents when I say barely made it, I mean barely made it.
So, was there like any kind of backup plan? I know music, you said you were born to write, you're born to play music, but at any time during like high school and almost, getting into those college years, were you thinking, okay, look, if this doesn't work out, or, what am I going to do? Do you ever have any of those thoughts?
Not once.
Not once. Wow. Yeah,
here's my thing. I don't believe in a plan B, and I encourage other people to not focus on a plan B, because whatever your A plan is, whatever you want more than anything in the world, that's what you should do, and that's what you should go after. Even if you don't know what that is immediately, go after that, because the fact of the matter is people have a bit of an ideology of they don't want to fail. I'm the opposite of that, and I was the opposite of that growing up. I went head first into everything when it came to music. And because I'm constantly, even at 45 years of age, I'm still a massive sponge when it comes to art, and when it comes to song, and when it comes to creativity just in general. But I tell people, I'm like, you need to fail. You've got to fail. It teaches you what to do next time. It builds you. It builds your character, because your life and your legacy won't be built by your failure. Your life and your legacy will be built by the fact that you refuse to give up. And so I've just never had a plan B.
You ever have a job outside of music? Like, do you remember your first job?
Oh yeah, totally. Dude, I've done everything under the sun.
Really?
Literally. Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about my mom and my dad in Tennessee back in the day was growing up, you could request a letter from the governor in Tennessee had a thing that you could, where basically you have to write a letter to the governor if you're I don't know if this is even in place anymore, but if you and your parents sent out for this letter and it came back and your parents signed it, they would allow you to, if you were 14 and you had permission from your parents, you could work.
Yeah, working papers.
Work more than 10 hours a week at 14, but you could work. And then when you were 15, but in the summer times at 14, you could work 25 hours.
Right.
If you weren't in school. And then when you were 15, you could work 20 hours a week, and you could work up to 36 hours during the summer. So as soon as I had an opportunity to make my own money, I immediately did it. And my parents signed off on that. So I started off like landscaping and mowing yards, but then I remember I've worked in a bunch of grocery stores, in produce. I was a bag boy. I've worked in a ton of restaurants growing up and what have you. I worked in warehouses. I've done it all. I put sprinkler systems in like residential areas in the wintertime when the ground is like concrete. I've done it all, man.
What was your favorite? Which one? Do you stick out? Anyone on one of those jobs stick out as like your favorite?
Shinedown is my favorite.
Yeah. All right. Touche. I'd say I agree. I get it, man, for sure.
Yeah. Being the front man in Shinedown is definitely my favorite.
I get it totally. What about your big break? I mean, if you're asking me about Shinedown, I could tell you that for me, you guys kind of came on the map with the song "Fly from the Inside." That's when I became aware of you, and then things slowly, gradually started building for Shinedown. But was there an instance, maybe meeting producer Desmond Child, maybe a show, a concert, opening up for a particular band? Was there a moment, Brent, when you said, man, I think we're going to be something, and like refer to that as maybe the band's big break or your big break?
Here's the way that I look at that. If there was ever a moment in time for me where I can look at it and go, that was a break for me or the band, or a moment in time where it definitely had an effect on the future. So a lot of people don't know this about me. And you talk about Fly from the Inside. That's the first song that we ever released as Shinedown. So that was the very first single. We have since released 31 singles since then.
Wow.
Which is astonishing.
It is.
And we're still releasing music. But I think the moment, the opportunity, if you will. So I was signed to Atlantic Records. The gentleman that signed me is a guy named Steve Robertson. He's very much he's an icon in the industry.
Steve-O?
Yep, Steve-O. And he signed me to a band, or I was in a band from Knoxville. I was signed by Steve. 10 months into that process, I was dropped from Atlantic. And then Steve came back to me and said, I want to sign you to a development deal. And I didn't know what that meant. And what it meant was trains, planes, and automobiles for the next 3 years.
Okay.
And why I say that is he gave me a development deal, and then it was a journey from that point on to develop what would become Shinedown and the Shinedown that the world knows to this day. But I've never subscribed to the ideology of necessarily like a big break or a certain moment in time or a moment of like, I've arrived. I often will tell people, reevaluate your career if you have these notions of wanting to arrive or that, you have arrived. Because a lot of times when you start to think like that, it means that you're falling out of love with what you're doing. I hope I never arrive.
You're a different guy. You're pretty grounded for the success that you have, and it's refreshing. But not everybody is like you. You're definitely very humble, honest, and.
But I encourage people to find themselves in that. Like, I'll have sometimes people will come to me and they'll be like, how do I do what you do? How can I be more like you? And I'm like, don't worry about being like me. You don't need to be me. You need to be you.
Right.
And you need to find that footing. And here's the thing, kind of going back to Symptom, we're all a work in progress. Even our career is a work in progress. But I will say this, like, I do have those moments in times, like the first album, like when we got the opportunity to open up for Van Halen for 2 months.
Wow.
Like in the first eight months of, Leave a Whisper, that debut album, which turned 20 this year.
Wow.
Crazy.
That is.
Sammy and, Michael and Eddie and Alex, they took us out for 2 years. We had an absolute ball. And Eddie and I kind of befriended each other on that tour. And it's some of the most fond memories I have of just touring in general. And then I think about in 2017 when we got the opportunity to go out with Iron Maiden in the UK and Europe, and we did 42 shows with them. And that was just a whirlwind of it was just amazing, everything that those guys and their crew and the audience, like the experiences that we had. There's so many different moments in time, but like those are some moments for me where I'm like, I had to kind of take a look around at myself and literally every day kind of pinch myself and be like, am I dreaming?
Right.
This is crazy. But at the same time, like with Van Halen, we were learning a lot. We were, looking and seeing and keeping our, our eyes and our ears open and really learning a lot from that. Like with Maiden, it was the respect factor of Maiden asked us to come out and do these shows and be main support for them. And but they expected us to go out there. We have a hammer too. So like every single night we would go out there and play like our lives depended on it. You know what I mean? So there's this wonderful, beautiful, healthy competition that happens out there with that. So there's not one particular, artist that we worked with or tour that we've worked with. They all stand out. We don't have any bad experiences. We truly don't with any of them. But if I had to think of two off the top of my head that really mean a great deal to me, it would be when we got the opportunity to open up for Maiden in 2017 and then the beginning of our career, like that first 8 months of Leave a Whisper and Van Halen taking us out for 2 months.
And I can tell you too, Brent, just following your career as closely as I have for the last 20 plus years, as an outsider, just kind of looking from afar, I've seen Shinedown go through these progressions. And so maybe not like one big break, but you had like a series of events that happened over the years that have, gotten you to, the Shinedown that you guys are today.
Yeah. And a lot of that comes down to the fact of, I removed the rear view mirror in the vessel that I am the captain of, I guess is what a lot of people say. But I removed the rear view a long time ago, meaning I'm always I'm not disrespectful of the past by any stretch of the imagination. But the thing is that I never wanted the band to be put into a box. And what that meant more too was from a musical standpoint, we are influenced by so many different genres of music and styles of music. So Shinedown, I've always tried to express to people, it's not about heavy metal. It's not about rock. It's not about metal music. It's not about rock music. It's not about pop music, country music, R&B music, hip hop music, rap music. I can go down the line. It's about all music.
Right.
And it's about, doing something that matters and finding a connection and being able to evolve and be elevated. And, I'm doing a lot of talking here about myself and certain things, but I got to say this too, because this is really the definition of everything that Shinedown truly, truly is, and why we're allowed to be ourselves is because the audience has given us a platform to be ourselves. And whether they've been there from day one or whether they're just finding out who we are, and people like yourself, because, the band Shinedown, and I say this very proudly, we were built by terrestrial radio in North America. And we continue to hold our, that flag very, very high for terrestrial radio, even in the new world of consumption of music and how streaming is a big factor in that and what have you. The reality, though, is we're a multi-format band. We're a multi-genre band because it's supposed to be about not one style of music. It's supposed to be about all music, and you should be allowed to evolve. And that's what our audience has allowed us to do. So I give a lot of credit to the fan base and everybody in Shinedown Nation, not just in the United States, but from a global standpoint. It's a worldwide fan base that is continuously growing, but also people like yourself that in the beginning and still to this day have continued to support us and be on our team. And I can't thank you enough for that, and I can't thank the audience enough for that.
Outside of music, is it true that you have invested in other types of companies and you do other things outside of music? And if you wouldn't mind talking about what some of those things are.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with me is I'm definitely a major fitness advocate, and, I'm working with different designs and different partnerships when it comes to that and like athletics and things of that nature. Barry owns a company that, built inside of Shinedown called Spartan Brews, which is a coffee company that he has with his friend Toe. And it's actually becoming like seriously, it's quite extraordinary what those two guys are doing right now with that coffee brand. But obviously that, part of that brand has a lot to do with Shinedown, even though Shinedown is not quote unquote a silent partner in it because it is called Spartan Brews. But that's something that, Barry came to us, told us what he was doing. We all wanted to be involved in those things, also to just, different summits that I'm always looking at when it comes to the evolution of how people consume music and, going back to terrestrial radio. I'm an advocate for that and an ambassador for those types of things. Yeah, man, I mean, it is a business in a lot of ways, and you have to kind of take a step back and look at all the opportunities that you have to not only build your brand, but to expose yourself in different markets, in different genres, in different formats and things of that nature. And also, too, the band has been ambassadors for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for going over, we're I think we're going on to year 12 that we've been working with them. That's a very, very intense and very, it's quite personal for us, that organization and how incredible they are. So we work a lot with them. We're working with City of Hope right now, who just honored Leor Cohen recently in New York. So yeah, man, there's always a lot of, elements of I do move on a dime, and I'm always doing business for the band and looking at opportunities and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, man, everything that I do, I try to always make it needs to be real and it needs to be authentic. And but yeah, man, if something interests me, I'm going to go after it. But at the end of the day, too, the band is the priority and the music is the priority.
It's always good talking to you, man. You're
you too, my friend.
You're an interesting guy. A lot of great success. Planet Zero. It's been out for a minute, but are you writing anything new? Starting to write a new album?
Yeah, working on different things right now. We're also working on just the overall. We just recently the band. We've begun work with William Morris endeavors with Lucy Dickens, who is the head of global touring for them. She is now signed on to, she's officially booking the band internationally now, so that was a big thing that got announced this week. And, a lot of stuff internationally that we're putting together. We're also continuing to build out the formats because a symptom of being human it's kind of consistently moving up the charts, moving into 2024 and what have you. But yeah, there's a lot of things in the works for 2024. But overall, full brand new touring, new album, new record cycle, all of that. I would definitely look for certain things to be happening in 2024, but I'm already in the touring aspects of 2025 and 2026.
Wow.
So I'm usually 3 years ahead.
Unbelievable. Wow. Well, again, I know your time is valuable, and I'm grateful, and thanks for always making the time.
It's my absolute pleasure, man. It's so good to hear your voice, my friend. I wish you well, and would love to much sooner than later see you in person, my friend, give you a big hug. So I hope that happens, like I said, sooner than later.
It probably will. Probably sooner than you'd hope.
Nah, man, bring it on. I'm ready.
Brent Smith from Shinedown. I had no idea that his dad was an educator. There's some serious pressure to, like continue your, scholastic career, go to college. No, Dad, I'm in a band in high school, man. I want to, do this music thing. I would kind of imagine that his dad would not be on board with that. But it seems like Brent and his father have a pretty good relationships. They bonded over, sports when he was younger, his dad being a teacher and a high school coach. And he said coached many state championships and a lot of successful teams. Brent played baseball and basketball as a younger guy in high school. But then, 15 years old or so, he just completely lost interest, went into music, and told his old man, like, hey, I know we bond over the sports, but that's kind of it. I'm done. And it seemed like his father took it pretty well. A lot better than my old man would have taken it. That's for sure. So Brent goes on to talk about his first job, and I guess he had a lot of different jobs. In Tennessee, he said that you would write to the government to basically get permission for your teenage son or daughter to work. It's much like growing up in New Jersey when we had working papers at like 14 or 15 years old. So, he began not only playing in bars and gigging when he was 14 years old in a band, but he said he did it all, bagging groceries, worked putting in sprinklers, did some landscaping, mowing lawns, all that kind of stuff, restaurant work. And when I asked him what his favorite job of those were, being the lead singer, Shinedown, definitely his most favorite job. Got a laugh out of that. And I get it. It's a pretty cool job. Never a plan B. Didn't want to go to college. Never thought about plan B. Always music. A lot of these successful celebrities kind of have the same plan. And I think a lot of that is because they started young and they didn't fail. It worked. They didn't have to pack it in and say, okay, I'm going to, go sell used cars. It didn't work out that way for a lot of these guys. I think Brent, though, if not in music, would definitely do something. I don't want to say in sales. I could definitely buy a house from Brent Smith, just something people related. He definitely is a people person and involved in a lot of outside businesses today. And of course, all the band's charitable organizations. So thanks everybody for listening. I would appreciate a 5-star rating. Of course, if you leave a review, we are available everywhere you pod. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them, baby. Past episodes on CelebrityJobber.com. You can follow us on IG, Celebrity Jobber Podcast. And once again, I thank you for listening. We'll see you next week. I'm Jeff Zito.